But let's just go back a bit before, because people who are listening to this or watching it, they may not know that was your first film, but your background was completely not in film. I mean, you were a writer, but you managed to tell us a story about how you came to do Bouncer and what happened. I mean, you know, the story that you sent it to Ray Winstone is quite inspiring as well.
Yeah, it was. But if I go right the way back, I'd written a book, I'd written Watch My Back. I was going out into the world and I was touring it, and Watch My Back is full of truth. It's full of certainty, or what in Islam they would call yakin, and that was resonating. So I was still working as a bouncer, and I was still working a day job, and I was on talk shows with Hollywood superstars because I had some truth to say. So I'd got no agent. I just kept ringing people until they got me on. I said, I've got something to say. I'm a bouncer and I'm working with violence, and I've got something to say about fear and about understanding fear. So I wrote that book, and it started to ripple out. And I remember I was doing a tour of, you know, promoting the book, and I bumped into a guy in a bookshop who was working in the bookshop, and he said, I'm working here as a shelf stacker, as an assistant, but I really want to be a writer. Can I interview you? And I was massively busy at the moment at that time, but I felt a real connection with him. So I said, look, I'm in Huddersfield next week. Why don't we meet there and you can interview me? And because he said, I want to try and sell it to the big issue. So I met him a week later. I ended up spending most of the day with him. It was a really lovely guy called Ben. And I never thought no more of it. I just did the interview. I took my son with me. We drove back, and it was a great day. Then a week later, I get a phone call from his sister, who I didn't know he'd got a sister. I just knew Ben. I only knew Ben. She said, I'm a film producer, and you spent some time with my brother last week. And, you know, he was struggling a little bit. He was a bit depressed, and he was, you know, he was an aspiring writer. He's a very good writer. And she said, I just wanted to say thank you. I said, it's a pleasure. She said, look, I'm a film producer. Would you like to come and meet me and my director? Because we'd love to do a documentary about you. So I said, yeah, I'll come down. So I went down. She said, well, a documentary is a hard sell, and we're going into drama. I said, while we're selling it, do you want to do a short film for us? Because we want to try and do a short film. So I said, yeah, I'll do you a short film. And I knocked out Bouncer. We put it in for funding, and we got 10 grand. We got 10 grand straight away, really easily, to make this film. So we sat in the meeting, and they were saying, well, who do we want as the lead? And I said, well, Ray Winstone. I said, I've written this for Ray Winstone. And everybody started laughing. And it was like, no, seriously though, Geoff, who do you want? Because, you know, we haven't got enough money to pay for Ray's lunch. I can't remember who said that. We haven't got enough money to pay for Ray's lunch. And I said, well, why don't we ask him? Why don't we see whether he wants to do it? Anyway, they managed to get to him, and he loved it. And of course, because we got Ray, we got Paddy Considine, and I've become friends with Paddy. And we got Ronnie Fox, and we got Sean Parks, who was brilliant in. You've probably seen him recently in Black Axe. Was it Black Axe? Yeah, Black Axe. Yeah, the Steve McQueen TV program. But anyway, we had a fantastic cast. We shot this film. I didn't know anything about making films. I didn't know how to write a film. I just got a few scripts and read them and thought, well, that's the format. And I just thought, I'll just tell it as I remember it. You know, I'll tell the story as I remember it. So I ended up with this really nice fictional. It's fictional, but it's based on my life. And Ray Winstone turned up, and he was amazing. I mean, you know, he was just the most generous guy. He paid for everybody's lunch, and when we did the launch, he paid for everybody's drinks. He didn't take no money. He just said, just give me a driver, so I can have a beer at night. And so we ended up with Ray Winstone in this tiny short film. But while we were on the set of that, I met Ray and Ronnie, and they kept telling stories. They're storytellers. So they were saying, Ray was saying to Ronnie, tell Geoff that story about when we was in Glasgow, and that girl come up to us with no teeth and says, get me a wee drinky, will ya? And I said, because Ronnie's like an alcoholic, and he's in AA and NA, and he's very open about it, you know. And I said, well, my brother died from alcoholism. I said, I could write you a film based just on that.
And that was your second film.
That was Brown Paper Bag.
But without, don't forget that, what did Bouncer go on to do? It was nominated for a BAFTA. Nominated for a BAFTA.
I didn't even know what a BAFTA was. I didn't know the film world. I didn't understand it. I wanted to write scripts, but I didn't really understand the world very much. But it got nominated for a BAFTA. That was our first film.